he had really, really good episodes during his 3-year run. And I literally consider to pick them out. I mean, he really had some really good shows, especially the episodes when they were in Salem. I love the Salem episodes. They were my favorite in season 7. Season 8, Serena's Witchcraft was a favorite of mine. Loved that episode with Mr. Lawford. And
I got the feeling it was a holdover from season 7 for some reason.
It was.
Because of the way Samantha was dressed.
And her hair. The hair.
And her hair.
It was a holdover from season 7.
I called that one. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. It was. I looked into that.
Because the big thing about the book was I didn't want to know, I didn't want to know behind the scenes stuff. I didn't want to look at other people's books, or too much of the internet to find stuff out. I just kind of wanted it to be me and the DVDs and my laptop and just with stuff that I saw. But every once in a while I would look stuff up. Like if when Da Vinci shows up and he says, I invented the parachute and the parasol and all these other things he's popping off with. And I'm like, well, did he really? Let's just check that. So then I would look into it. It's like, oh, okay, well, he did invent these, and we're not sure he invented those. Banana Pisano, Esmeralda's boyfriend. Okay, they say he built the Tower of Pisa. Let's find out. Oh, well, back then they attributed it to Banana Pisano, but now they attribute it to this other guy. So it's just that's the kind of stuff I find interesting. Is finding out the logistics of this stuff. Like, okay, so Larry got to the house the next scene, but Manhattan is 60 miles away from Westport. So that's an hour's drive, son. How did you pull that off?
How did you pull that off? You got powers of your own that Samantha doesn't know about?
I know, right? Chevrolet must be really making some supercars.
Yep. Serena's Youth Pill is another favorite of mine.
Oh, yeah, that is. I mean, the reason I love that one so much is because it's a Larry-centric episode. He doesn't get too many of those.
Right, it was a Larry-centric episode. I love that. There was the Larry-centric episode in season 2.
Double Tate.
That I thought was fun too. Mother gave you 3 wishes for your birthday. I was like, yeah, Darrin used those foolishly, but
I know, right? It was just neat to see David White get to play a Larry Tate that wasn't, just somebody that was obsessed with accounts all the time. It was nice. It was nice, and I'm sure he must have enjoyed as an actor getting a chance to kind of not be the straight man for a change. So I love that they gave him a chance once in a while.
I loved the fact that David White was playing Darrin as Larry. I thought that was so fun.
Isn't that wild? And he captured it too.
He did. He really did. And I loved in Serena's Youth Pill how when he had the red hair and before the office scene where he told Darrin to just call him Tate, I mean in the scenes where he shows up at the house with his new dude.
Oh, with Louise, yeah.
Yeah, and I just thought he was just having so much fun.
And you can tell. You can tell when they're having fun with it because it just translates. It makes you feel good.
That was a fun episode, and Samantha's Secret is Discovered was a favorite of my Sargent episodes that I watch a lot. I love that one. That's
a great episode, especially because it refers back to the first episode with Aunt Madge.
That thought she was a lighthouse, yeah.
Yeah, which they hadn't mentioned since first season. I was like, wow, that's amazing continuity to even bring that up. Who's going to remember that 5 years later?
Exactly, with a different Darrin.
With a different Darrin, yeah.
With a different Darrin. So I thought that was cool, too. I was like, I don't think they ever mentioned her until just now, and I thought that was cool. Obviously, I think everybody's favorite was Serena Stops the Show.
Yeah, that was a really good one.
Oh man, who could not love that? Who could love that show more? I mean, seriously, that literally was my favorite. Would either of us know who Voice and Heart is if it wasn't for that episode? True, but I would say, even though I did watch them on I Dream a Genie when they were on it before that. So I was kind of like, oh, that's funny. I didn't realize they were on it. Oh my god. They appeared on I Dream a Genie in when they were in their season 3, which was Bewitched season 4. So they were on that show before they hit the Bewitched scene.
Oh, wow, like 2 years before. Wow.
So that's how I knew who they were, because of I Dream of Jeannie. So I was like, oh, they appeared on here too, because I got to that episode. It's like, oh, that's so cool. So I was totally in love with that episode. And, of course, when I posted a picture of Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart with Liz in her Serena outfit on Twitter, my friend Matt comes in and he says, who, by the way, created the theme song for Days of Our Lives. I said, yeah, most don't know that, but we do.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. They were behind.
It all ties together.
It all ties together to our soap love, too. So there's that.
Oh, yeah, that goes back quite a ways, too. I mean, it's so funny because I didn't even like soaps at first. I remember my mom watching Dynasty in syndication, not even the first run stuff, it was syndication, and just sitting there doing my homework, and this is so stupid. I mean, I used to call it Dynasty. I mean, just because I was just making fun of it. And then there was that episode where Claudia had what we thought was the baby on the roof, and she dropped it. And I was just like, oh my God. Like OMG 20 years before there was such a thing as OMG.
Right.
And I was like, wow, I had to see more of it. And so I went to the first run episode, and that was the same week that you had the two crystals beating each other up.
Oh, in the attic. Yeah.
That was my first run episode, and from there on, every Wednesday night, there I was.
I didn't know too much about Dynasty, and then, I was just like doing some backstory on it and whatnot just to give myself a feel of it, and they talked about the two crystals fighting, and I said, wait, what? So when I found the scene on YouTube, I said, oh my God, this actually happened. And
it was like Mortal Kombat, the way they're standing there kind of like going back and forth before they whack each other, with the wigs hanging in front of their faces so you can't tell it's stunt doubles, but still. I
still think that there's part of me feels that Linda Evans had to be a part of that somehow.
Oh, I know she was doing a good chunk of it. She was definitely doing a good chunk of it, but there are certain parts where you can tell that they're trying to.
It was
both
stunt
Yeah,
doubles.
They're trying to keep the wigs in front of their faces so they can't be seen, which is not easy to do in the scene where you're supposed to be beating yourself up. But so Linda Evans got to beat herself up, and Elizabeth Montgomery got to throw a pie at herself.
She threw a pie at herself. Yep.
Which is probably a TV first and only, because I don't think anybody's done that since. But yeah, it was Dynasty, and then I graduated high school, and my mom was watching the CBS soaps, and it would have been spring of 1988 when I remember sitting down with her and starting to look at Young and the Restless and Bold and the Beautiful, and of course, As the World Turns and Guiding Light, rest in peace. But yeah, I mean, that's where that started. I mean, I had no idea that all these years later I'd be writing a column about Bold and the Beautiful every other week. But I like that I have that much of a history with the show that I can go, wait a second. Back in 1990, you people might not know this, but we already did this 25 years ago, stuff like that. So I'm terrible to watch anything with because I always notice things. And but I will say that learning about continuity it forces me to be that stringent in my own work too. So it's not just picking things apart to be complaining. It's when things, no matter what the show, whether it's Bold and Beautiful, Bewitched, whatever, when things fuse together, when there's a certain level of detail paid attention to, it's a better watching experience. And there's kind of this weird sense of well-being because what came before and it's being honored. So when B&B plays fast and loose with their history, which they seem to do an awful lot of, it drives me nuts.
I'm sure. And I never
this whole thing right now with Eric and Quinn, it's like, okay, why is nobody reminding Eric what it was like when he was married to Sheila?
Oh my God, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. So, mind you, I grew up on the CBS soaps, and I started with World Turns because, that was my first show I ever got into, and that was 1990, and I started watching obviously Guiding Light around the same time because that was the show that was on when school was over.
Oh, right. And it came on next anyway, in most CBS stations.
Thank you, Dan Regent. By the way, who I absolutely adore. I love Dan Regent to this day. He was probably one of my favorite soap announcers ever. So, and if you don't follow him on Twitter, I think you should. But, so, loved World Turns. I got into it. I was all about the Lily and Holden life, even though it wasn't Martha Burns' Lily. But
oh, that's right. It wasn't her for a while. Yeah.
I started watching World Turns when Martha Byrne already had left, so I had no idea about Martha Byrne until she came back in '93. And
that's when it was. That's right.
I was like, "Who's this Lily? I don't know who this Lily is. Like, who is this Lily?" I thought
so. Holden had amnesia, and I wonder if he couldn't remember Lily.
Yeah. I was pretty much Holden at this point because I didn't know who this Lily was. So, but I was just like, I loved Martha Byrne when she came on in the show. And then when I found out she was on the show prior in the 80s, I was like, she was? I was like, oh no, I got to find these episodes now because it was around the time, and it's funny because I didn't realize she was on the show in the 80s. You would think that when they did the 40th anniversary with the montage, I would have seen Lily in the 80s from that point.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They did.
They went
there.
There were not any clips of her from the 80s with her and John Hensley as Holden. It wasn't until John Hensley came back in 1997 when he got his memory back. You could tell by the hair. You could tell by the hair in those clips that was
got to be the hair.
Definite 80s. And I said, wait, she was on this show back then. Wait, what? So then that's my first excursion to when Martha Byrne was a teenage Lily, and then when they started airing these classic episodes, and when they aired the episode when Iva told Lily that she was her daughter, I was just in my all-time glory. I was pretty much recording it on my VCR, wearing out the tape, rewatching it over and over and going like, this is my As the World Turns I love. This is what I want. And this is the love of my life. This is the Marlon that I loved watching. And, unfortunately, Marlon, as I got older and looking back on a lot of stuff, Marlon did have a knack for dragging a lot of stuff out. And he also had a knack for people eavesdropping on every single conversation.
I noticed that. Somebody was always
over-listening. It started, I started it where Tonio Reyes overheard Lucinda telling Ambrose Bingham that Lily was adopted, which is how he blackmailed her to having a job at Walsh Enterprises before he wound up getting fired once Lily found out the truth. But overheard that. Holden overheard Iva and Emma on the Snyder farm when Iva found out that she was adopted, which in turn changed everything for him to be with Lily, since he couldn't be with Lily because at the time they thought they were related, and now he's not.
That's right. Yeah.
Now they're not related by blood, so now he could have been with her, so that changed that relationship.
That was William Fichtner, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever get like where you watch movies now and you know that, like Julianne Moore, for example, it's like you go, yeah, she totally starred on the soaps. Recognize. And
she still pays homage to that.
Which is great because a lot of them don't, yeah.
She pays homage every single time if you ever see her in an interview or whatever, she always talks about her time at As the World Turns. She always talks about it. Even when she won her SAG Award, she talks about As the World Turns on that stage. I was so in love with it because she's one of those actresses that pays homage to that show that started her career.
Isn't that great? Because there's so many, because the soaps have kind of still this bad rep where even some of the actors kind of distance themselves afterwards, as if they're ashamed of it, and there's nothing to be ashamed of there. And in a lot of ways, doing a soap is harder than doing a movie because there's so much dialogue every day. I don't know how they memorize all this stuff.
And that's one of the things I always hate when I hear that there are actors who started on soaps that don't want to talk about their soap roots. I mean,